Welcome back to our C# beginner tutorials. In the previous lesson, we saw an example of a class. We created an employee class, which is this, and we did say initially that a class is a collection of variables and methods. But if you notice in our employee class, we only have variables. We don't have any method in our employee class. So in the previous lesson, we did create this method, but it was within our program class, and we used the method to display the details of an employee, of a particular employee. And in order to do that, because it is outside the employee class, it is within the program class, whenever we want to show the employee details, we have to pass a particular employee. Okay, so this is where we called the method and we pass a particular employee. So for example, employee 2. And I remember saying in this class, we're going to see how we're going to migrate. So we're going to take out this method from here and we're going to take it into the employee class. The reason we want to do that is so that each employee has his own show details method. Okay. Also, that means that when we want to show the details of an employee, we don't need to call a method outside here. We just call the name of the employee, like that's the variable holding the employee, for example, employee 2, and then we say dot show details. Okay, and you'll notice that in doing that, it means we don't have to pass a particular employee. Like we don't have to pass the employee that we want to or whose details we want to show. The reason is because already we are accessing a particular employee, so we're just saying show that employee's details. Let me just go ahead and write the code, and maybe you'll understand what I mean. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to cut out, since the method is going to be very similar to this, we'll just cut out this method. I'll select everything from here to here and do Control X to cut. So we no longer have that method there. So this is giving us an error because that method does not exist anymore. So I'm just going to remove that method called there, and I'll go to the employee class. And this is how you create a method within your class. So remember, I said these curly brackets after public class employee, that's the name of the class. You open the curly bracket, you close the curly bracket. All the definitions for that class should reside within these two curly brackets. Okay, don't worry about these two curly brackets. They are for the namespace. I said we're going to look at namespace later. Okay, so within there, okay, not there, within here, this is where we're going to create our method. So I'll just paste it. At the moment is wrong. First of all, it is not going to be a static method. Now, still within this lesson, I'm going to explain the static keyword. Okay, I'm going to remove the static for now. Okay, and also I'll just change the name of the method. Instead of show employee details, I'll just call it show details. Okay, and then finally, we are not going to be expecting an employee to be passed, okay, as argument. We do not expect any argument to be passed. When we call the show details, we just call show details for any particular employee. We do not expect a particular employee to be passed. Okay, then also finally in here, all these employee dot first name, employee dot name, I'm going to remove the employee dot and I'm going to leave it as first name, middle name, last name. And I'll just explain. Let me just finish and I'll explain why we're doing that. Okay. Okay. All right. The reason we're removing all that employee dot, first of all, if you notice, there's nothing like employee within this class. Okay, there's nothing like that's employee with small e, not the capital E. The one with the capital E is the name of the class, obviously. So you can actually access, you see, when you are within a particular class, right? We're within the employee class. We can directly access the first name variable, this variable, okay? That field, we can directly access it without having us to write any employee dot first name, okay? Because we are within the class. It is when we are outside the class, like when we are within program.cs, right? That is when we will need to call, we'll need to write like employee2 first dot, like the way we did it here, employee2 dot first name. You can't just write first name and expect it to access this first name, okay? It's not going to work. You have to write the particular employee, which is employee2, which we created, and then dot first name. But when you are within the class, okay, this is within the employee class, all these variables, first name, middle name, last name, you can directly access them. You don't need any employee dot, okay? So that's why we removed that employee dot. And that's all. Okay, so that's what this show details is going to do. So if you notice, the show details is very similar to the previous show details. I'll just go ahead and save this file, save all. The only difference is that first of all, you notice we are not passing any argument. That's, we're not passing a particular employee, because we expect the particular employee. I don't know if this is going to make any sense to you, but if you remember the way the class is, each, for a particular class, that's for this employee class, we can actually manufacture several different employees. We can manufacture up to 500 or 600 or 1000 different employee objects, okay? Now, this first name is going to depend on the particular employee object which we are calling the show details of. I don't know if that makes any sense, okay? Let's just go back to our program.cs and I'll show you how we will do that. In fact, we're going to call the show details of all the 3 different employees and you'll see what I mean, okay? So let's go back to the program.cs, this class, and we have created, remember, this is where we declared our employee1 variable. I said here we're just declaring the variable, we haven't created the object yet. This is where the object was created, so an employee was created and we assign it into employee1, okay? And then we set these first name, middle name, last name, and all these details for that particular, this particular employee1, okay? Then we did the same for employee2. So employee1 and employee2 are 2 different objects, okay? Employee3 is another different object entirely. So we have 3 different objects. And then finally here, notice that we do not need to create any show details method, okay? If we want the details of employee1 to be displayed, we just write employee1 dot show details, and then we open a curly bracket, a normal bracket, and we close the normal bracket, and we put our semicolon, okay? Remember how we usually call a method? We usually call a method by just writing this. Suppose we had a show details method. This is how we would have called it. But because the show details method we want to call is the one belonging to employee1, okay, that's why we have to first write employee1 dot and then the show details method. Also, I would like to show you something. I'll just remove the dot and bring it back, okay? Notice the options we're getting here. We have an age, first name, forget the equals, the get hash code, the get type, all these methods, don't worry about them for now. I know I haven't talked about, when we talk about sub classes, I'll come back and talk about these get hash code, equals, get type, and you might be wondering where are they coming from, because we did not create any get hash method. So when we look at subclasses, we're going to talk about those, okay? So the ones I want you to look at is the ones we created by ourselves: the first name, the gender, the ID number, the last name, the middle name. Notice the symbol by the side. This shows that they are all fields. Okay, this shows that they are fields or no or instance variables. Okay, and then I want us to go down and look at the show details. Look at the difference. There is a difference between the icon on the left for these guys and the one on the left for show details. Remember what I said this icon means. This icon means that show details is a method. Okay, so that's the difference. If you have a field, this is the kind of icon you get. If you have a property, I said for now take property and fields to be the same thing because they are very similar, even though properties is more like a method. Okay, but for now just think of property as a field. Okay, and usually for properties it's a spanner, it's a kind of spanner icon you get on the left hand side. So that's it. That's what I wanted to show you. Okay, that this show details is a method, and you can see Visual Studio is recognizing it as a method. Okay, so notice the difference. If you're going to access a normal variable or a field, you do not use brackets like employee3 dot first name. We did not use brackets. Okay, but for a method employee1 dot show details, notice that we put these brackets. Okay, that shows that it's a method call, and usually if the method has arguments, the arguments are going to lie within this these two open and closing normal brackets. Okay, I hope that makes sense. So let's just go ahead. I said we were going to display the three different details. So I'll just write, okay, let's just go ahead and do employee2 dot show details, and employee3 dot show details. So we expect to see in the output window the details of employee 1 to be first displayed, that's written out on the console, then the details of employee 2, then finally the details of employee 3. Okay, so let's go ahead and run this program and see what happens. Okay, here we have it. So you see name Abdul OT. This is from here to here is the details of employee 1, and then from here to here the details of employee 2, from here to here the details of employee 3. In fact, we can actually separate them by using a call to console.writeline. Okay, remember what console.writeline does. It usually writes a line of string that you give it. However, if you don't give it anything to write, it means it's just going to create an empty space. That's a carriage return. Okay, so I'm just using console.writeline to separate the three different details using a single line. Okay, console.writeline, and do not pass anything. Okay, so let's go ahead and run the program again, and we see that you can see they are well separated now using the extra space. So these are employee 1, these are employee 2, and these details of employee 3. Okay, so with this, I hope you are able to see that an object is usually just a collection of variables and methods. Okay, so we have three objects here, and like I said earlier, a class is like a template. It defines what the objects coming out from that class are going to look like. What it kind of shapes the object that comes out from it. Okay, so if this class says it has a first name, it has a first name variable, a middle name variable, a last name variable, an ID number, a gender, an age variable, and a show details method, it means every single object that's coming out from this class, this employee class, is going to possess all these members. Okay, let me bring up Notepad. There's a keyword I just mentioned now that you should take good care, because in most books you're going to read, this is what you're going to see: members. Okay, members of a class. Members of a class. Okay, so these are the members of the employee class: first name, middle name, last name, ID number, gender, age, and show details. They are the members of the employee class. Okay. um it also means that for members that are instance members, okay, so let's just go ahead and type that out: instance members of a class. So there are what we call instance members of a class, and there are what we call static members of a class. Okay, good. This is going to link us to the next discussion we are going to talk about. You've seen us, we've been using the static keyword, and I've been postponing and saying I'm going to explain what the static means. So this is where we're going. Here is where we're going to explain the meaning of that static keyword. Okay, so for members of a class, you can actually have instance members of a class and static members of a class. Now, what are the difference, and what do they do? What do they accomplish? We're going to explain that now. Okay. All right. First of all, I would like to tell you that all these members here that we've listed are instance members of a class. Okay. So why are they instance members of class? They are instance members because every single object that comes out of this employee class is going to have all these properties. Okay, and usually instance members, you do not type static before them. Okay, so by just writing static before this string first name, usually the access modifier, that's whether it's public, private, or protected. There are 3 different access modifiers for every member of a class: public, private, and protected. Okay, we're going to look at them later. I told you we're going to look at them later when we look at maybe when we start looking at subclasses, or maybe before then. Okay, for protected, definitely we're going to look at protected when we start looking at subclasses, because that's the only place you're going to see the difference between protected and private, okay, or protected and public. Okay, so you usually write the static after the access modifier, that's if it's public, private, or protected, but before the data type, before you specify the data type of the variable. So that means that I don't think, by the way, I've never tried this, I don't think you can put the static here. Yes, you can't. Okay, so it has to be just before the data type that defines the variable. Okay, so if you want a member of a class to be a static member, you indicate it by writing the static. Okay, and if you want it to be an instance member, you do not write anything, and by default it is an instance member. Just like public and private, if you do not write anything here, by default this becomes a private string first name. Okay, so that's how you make a member public, a member static, or instance, or an instance member. Now, what are the difference? What do you accomplish by making a member of a class private? By making a member of a class static, or by making it an instance member. Now, if you make a member of a class static, it means that particular member will not be part of the members of the objects that come out of that class. I don't know if that makes any sense. Let me rephrase it and put it another way. Okay, if you have a static member of a class, it means that member belongs to the class only. Okay, it is not going to be part of the members of the objects that come out of that class. Okay, now let me just show you by making this first name static. Okay, notice that it is public, so we should expect to be able to access it from anywhere. Okay, but I'm making it static. Okay, now let me just save that, Control S. Now go to program and see what happens. You see employee1 dot first name. Notice the error is giving us member employee dot first name cannot be accessed with an instance reference. Okay, now what this is saying is just saying that this first name does not exist for this employee1. Okay, it is a member of the employee class. Now notice what happens if I write something like employee dot, and there we have it. Look at the first name. Okay, now you can access this first name only if you write employee dot, but you cannot access it if you create an employee and then try to that you create an object of employee and then try to access a member, that's employee one dot. Notice that the first name has disappeared from the members. Okay, so that's static. Okay, if a member is static, it only belongs to the class. You can only access it by writing the name of the class and then dot. Okay, and if a member is an instance member, for example, this first name let's go back and make it an instance member. So let's remove the static there. Okay, so all these members are static instance members. Now if a member is an instance member, notice what happens if I try to write employee dot. Notice we do not have the first name, we do not have the middle name, we don't have anything. Okay, because it does not have any static name. In fact, okay, it actually has two static members, the equals and the reference equal, which we did not create by ourselves. They were inherited, and inheritance I said we're going to cover later when we look at subclasses. Okay, so for now, the first name, the middle name, the last name, all the details, all the members of the class that we created are members. They are instance members, meaning that you can only access them after you have created an object of that class. You cannot just call the class and expect to have those members available. Okay, good. Now that is the difference between static members and instance members. Okay, now what someone may be wondering, why would you want a static member? Okay, now let me cite an example. Let's take, for instance, in this program you're creating. Suppose you're creating a program for a company, okay, or for an organization. Let's say it's a financial institution, okay, and all the employees of that financial institution are supposed to use the same bank. Okay, that's where they're going to be paid their salary. They're going to be wired through a bank, and that particular bank is going to be selected by the institution, that's by the organization. Okay, so in that case you expect suppose we have in our details of employees, suppose we also have something like a bank. Okay, so let's say public string bank name, that's the bank which the employee use. Okay, now the name of the bank which each employee use are going to be the same throughout. Okay, that's for all of them. Like that's, suppose that is like a policy of the organization, that everybody that works under that financial institution is supposed to use that particular bank. Now imagine if you go ahead and you create this as an instance variable, public string bank name. Now notice what happens if you create employee 1, it means you have to set his employee 1 dot bank name. You have to set it, let's say let's give it let's say GT Bank. Okay, sorry, it's a string, so GT Bank. Okay, so we set the bank name for this employee 1. Now there's nothing wrong with this, like that's well, not nothing per se. There's what I mean is there's it's not that it's syntactically wrong. Okay, it's going to run, but notice the problem you're going to run into. If you reach employee 2, what's going to happen? You'll have to set employee 2's bank name also, and notice what you're doing. You're going to set it as GT Bank also. Okay, so you're repeating yourself. Notice employee 3, you're going to do the same thing. You're going to set it to the same item. Employee 3 dot bank name is also going to be GT Bank. Okay, so if you create 100 employees, they are all going to be GT Bank. So why should we bother into making this an instance variable? I hope you're getting an idea of the use case of static variables. Okay, now this is where a static variable is very, very handy. Instead of making it an instance variable so that every single employee has a bank name, why not make it a static variable, meaning that it's static for all the employees? Okay, if you make it a static variable, you only need to set it once. And also, by the way, if tomorrow the organization wakes up and say, okay, we're not going to be using GT Bank anymore, all employees are going to transfer, are going to be changed back to say Diamond Bank. That means in your program, all these are going to change to Diamond Bank. You come here and change it to, you can see it's not the most efficient way to write code. Okay, so that is the whole that is an example of where you're going to need a static variable. Okay, so let's go ahead and create this bank name as a static variable of the employee class. So we're going to say public static string bank name. Okay, and notice what happens if we go to program.cs. We only need to set it once. We'll just come here and say employee. You can set it here, by the way. Employee dot bank name is equal to, and then you just say GT Bank, and that's it. It doesn't matter if you have 100 different employee objects. You don't need to set it anymore. Whenever you want to access the bank name for all employees, all you need to do is just say employee. For example, that's in employee.showDetails. Let's go ahead and do that. So in show details of an employee, we expect to show the details, right? So we expect to show his bank. So we'll just write console.writeline. You put your $, and we write bank, and we output the bank name. Okay, all right. Notice that here I am not writing employee.bankname, even though that is also correct. So you can actually write employee.bankname here. This is correct. You notice that this, I can write employee.bankname, but I cannot write employee.age here. Employee.age. This is not going to work. Why? Because age is an instance variable, right? You cannot access instance variable when you are within the class. Okay, when you're writing code within the class. Well, not that you can actually you can access the instance variable, but if you're accessing an instance variable, you do not include the name of the class. Okay, because age is an instance variable. By you writing employee dot, you're saying you're trying to access the static variable. Okay, whenever you write the name of employee, that's the name of a class, and dot, it means you are trying to access a static variable, and that is why this is not going to work. Okay, because age is not a static variable, age is an instance variable. Okay, and also you can still write it as bank name here because you are within the employee class. Okay, so this is still correct also. Okay, so this is true for static variables. You can access them when you are within the class. Okay, all right, let's go ahead and run this program and see. By the way, you notice here we display the details of each employee, and let's see what happens. You see, so bank GT bank, bank GT bank, bank GT bank. You don't have to go ahead and set the name of the bank for each employee, okay? Because you can just make the bank name to be static. Now that is an example. I just cited you an example of a use case where you might need a static variable. Okay, so static variables or static members, not necessarily a variable, it could be a method. You could have a method that's static. Okay, in that case the method belongs to the class. Maybe in a later lesson we should look at an example of a use case where you might need a static method in the class. Okay, but for now we'll just stick to this variable, static variable. Okay, I hope we've covered, I think in this lesson we've covered quite some ground, even though I would have wanted us to look at constructors in this lesson, but I think the time is beginning to get too long. I don't want each video to be too long, so I'll just go ahead and stop here. At least we've seen the use of static. Today we know the difference between static and normal variables, and we've also seen methods within our class, and we've seen a use case of a static variable. That's where we use the employee.bank. Okay, so see you in the next class.